History is full of memorable moments. Some of them are familiar to us from our educational institutions, some are not. Today, I have prepared 10 significant historical events for you. So, make yourselves comfortable and let's get started. Invention of the wheel. We'll start from the beginning. The wheel was invented in Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, in the 4th. This puts the invention somewhere between 4000 and 3000 before Christ. We can't pinpoint a single inventor because it likely arose gradually through experimentation and improvement. The earliest evidence suggests the wheel was first used for potter's wheels, not transportation. Imagine a rotating platform to help shape clay. The first wheels were likely simple wooden discs with a hole for an axle. Later, they were made from 3 carved planks joined together. Spoked wheels, which are lighter and stronger, appeared around 2000 BC. The invention of the wheel revolutionized transportation, making it easier to move goods and people over long distances. It also played a role in the development of agriculture, warfare, and other aspects of civilization. Construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. We can't talk about historical landmarks and not mention the creation of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza is shrouded in a bit of mystery, but here's what archaeologists believe based on current evidence. So, the Great Pyramid of Giza built around 2600 BC. It took an estimated 27 years to complete, an impressive feat for the time. This places construction under the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, Cheops, of the 4th dynasty. Contrary to popular belief, slaves likely weren't the main builders. Experts theorize that tens of thousands of skilled laborers were employed. These workers may have been paid or contributed their labor as a form of tax. Evidence for this comes from worker cemeteries discovered near the pyramids. How many stone blocks do you think were needed to build the pyramid? The pyramid is estimated to consist of over 2.3 million massive stone blocks, weighing a total of around 6 million tons. Most of the limestone blocks came from quarries right next to the pyramid. Granite, a harder stone, was used for the upper chambers and the outer casing, now mostly gone. Exactly how these enormous stones were moved is still being debated. Here are the 2 main theories. First option. Ramps. Many believe ramps were built alongside the pyramid to haul the stones to higher levels. The exact design and size of these ramps are under discussion. The second possible method is water channels. Some theories suggest using water channels to transport stones by boat. This method would be effective on flat land, but becomes less feasible at higher levels. Overall, the construction of the Great Pyramid is a marvel of human ingenuity and organization. While there are still unanswered questions, archaeologists continue to piece together the remarkable story of this ancient wonder. Next memorable moment: fall of the Roman Empire. Well, let's look at why the Roman Empire fell. First of all, military pressures. From the 3rd century AD onwards, the empire faced increasing pressure from Germanic tribes on its borders. These groups, like the Visigoths and Huns, sought land and resources within the empire. The Roman military, once a formidable force, struggled to defend the vast territory. Economic strain, maintaining a large military and dealing with constant invasions took a toll on the Roman treasury. High taxes and inflation weakened the economy. Additionally, trade routes became less secure, disrupting commerce. Political instability. The later Western Roman Empire saw a frequent turnover of emperors, often through assassinations or military coups. This political instability made it difficult to develop and implement long-term solutions to the empire's problems. Social divisions. The gap between the rich and the poor widened. Many citizens lost faith in the government's ability to protect them and improve their lives. This social unrest further weakened the empire. The sack of Rome. In 410 AD, the Visigoths under Alaric I sacked Rome, a symbolic blow to the empire's prestige. While the city recovered, it never regained its former power. As a result, in 476 AD, Odoacer, a Germanic military leader, deposed the last Roman emperor in the West, Romulus Augustulus. This event is often seen as the symbolic end of the Western Roman Empire. It's important to note that the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, continued for another 1,000 years. The Byzantines preserved Roman legal codes, administrative structures, and cultural traditions. The signing of the Magna Carta, also known as the Great Charter, is a pivotal moment in English history. King John, 1199 to 1216, was an unpopular ruler who angered many powerful barons by raising taxes heavily, being seen as a weak military leader, and allegedly mistreating the nobility. By 1215, the barons rebelled, forming an army to pressure the king into addressing their grievances. They demanded a written charter outlining their rights and limiting the king's power. Let's take a virtual trip through time and travel to the year 1215 in Runnymede. On June 15, 1215, King John met the barons at Runnymede, a meadow near the River Thames. After negotiations and threats of war, King John agreed to seal the Magna Carta. What was in the agreement? The Magna Carta wasn't a radical democratic document. It primarily focused on protecting the privileges of the nobility. However, it established important principles that resonated throughout history. Firstly, the king couldn't impose taxes or imprison people without following established legal procedures. Secondly, people were entitled to a fair trial by their peers. And last but not least, even the king was subject to the law. The Magna Carta itself wasn't a permanent solution. King John soon reneged on the agreement, leading to renewed conflict. However, the document was reissued with revisions several times in subsequent years by later kings. Here are a couple other interesting points about Magna Carta. The original Magna Carta was written in Latin. 4 copies of the Magna Carta still exist today, 2 held by the British Library. Let's talk about Black Death in Europe. The Black Death, also known as the bubonic plague, was a devastating pandemic that ravaged Europe from 1347 to 1353. Let's take a closer look at the events of this dark period. The Black Death originated in Central Asia and was most likely spread by fleas living on rodents like rats. Trade routes, particularly along the Black Sea, facilitated the disease's entry into Europe. The plague was caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis. This bacterium lives in the bodies of rodents and is transmitted to humans through the bites of infected fleas. The Black Death is estimated to have killed 30% to 60% of Europe's population, with some regions experiencing even higher losses. This immense death toll had profound social, economic, and religious consequences. The plague spread rapidly due to the lack of sanitation and understanding of how diseases were transmitted. Symptoms included fever, chills, buboes, swollen lymph nodes, and vomiting. The massive death toll led to labor shortages, economic decline, and social unrest. Fear and paranoia ran rampant, with people blaming various groups for the plague. Treatment is also worth noting. First, limited medical knowledge. Medieval medicine had no effective methods of treating the plague. People relied on religious rituals, herbs, and bloodletting, which did little to stop the disease. Second, social isolation measures. Some communities imposed quarantines to isolate the sick, but these measures were not always effective due to limited knowledge of transmission routes. The Black Death had a long-term impact on European society. It led to higher wages for workers due to labor shortages, a decline in the power of the Catholic Church, and changes in social structures. One more memorable moment is, of course, Columbus's first voyage to the Americas. Christopher Columbus's first voyage to the Americas in 1492 is a significant event, often marking the beginning of the Columbian Exchange. Consider the motivations and preparations for the trip. First, searching for a trade route, Columbus, a Genoese explorer, believed he could reach Asia by sailing west across the Atlantic Ocean. This route would bypass trade routes controlled by the Ottoman Empire. Second, support from Spain. Having been rebuffed by Portugal, Queen Isabella I and King Ferdinand II of Spain funded Columbus' voyage. Third, ships Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. Columbus sailed from Spain in August 1492 in 3 ships, Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. The voyage took longer than expected, with the crew facing strong currents, unfamiliarity with the vast ocean, and potential mutiny due to anxieties about the unknown. On October 12, 1492, after over 2 months at sea, Columbus landed on an island in the Bahamas, believing he had reached the East Indies. He made contact with the native inhabitants, the Taino people. While Columbus believed he had reached Asia, he had stumbled upon the Americas, initiating centuries of European exploration and colonization of the Western Hemisphere. Columbus claimed the land for Spain, initiating a chain of events that led to the displacement and exploitation of indigenous populations. Columbus's voyage marked the beginning of the Columbian Exchange, a massive movement of plants, animals, diseases, and cultures between the Americas, Europe, and Africa. This exchange transformed societies on both sides of the Atlantic. It's important to consider the voyage from multiple perspectives. European exploration. It marked a turning point in European exploration and global trade. Impact on indigenous people. For the indigenous populations of the Americas, it was the beginning of a devastating period of conquest, disease, and cultural disruption. Let's move on to the Reformation period. The Reformation, which began in 1517, was a religious and political upheaval that split Western Christianity. Let's take a look at the key figures, ideas, and long-term consequences. Germany 1517. Martin Luther, a German monk and professor of theology, was concerned about the Catholic Church's practice of selling indulgences, absolution for sins. 95 Theses. On October 31, 1517, Luther published his 95 Theses, a list of propositions challenging the sale of indulgences and advocating a return to basic Christian principles. This act is often seen as the symbolic beginning of the Reformation. The core ideas of Protestantism. Justification by faith. Luther advocated salvation through faith in God's grace alone, rejecting the Church's emphasis on good works and the role of priests. Priesthood of all believers. Luther challenged the Church hierarchy, arguing that all believers have direct access to God through Holy Scripture, the Bible. Authority of Scripture. The Bible became the sole source of religious authority, challenging the authority and interpretations of the Pope. Spread of Protestantism. The printing press played a crucial role in spreading Luther's ideas. Increased literacy allowed more people to access and interpret religious texts. Many people in Europe became comfortable with Luther's criticism of corruption, wealth, and abuse of power by the Church. Formation of Protestant denominations. Luther's ideas inspired other reformers like John Calvin and Ulrich Zwingli. This led to the rise of various Protestant denominations, including Lutheranism, Calvinism, and Anabaptism. What was the Catholic Church's response? The Catholic Church launched the Counter-Reformation to address the challenges posed by Protestantism. This movement included reforms to address corruption, establish seminaries for better-trained priests, and strengthen the Inquisition to suppress dissent. The Council of Trent, 1545 to 1563, clarified Catholic doctrines and practices, defining the Catholic position on many issues contested by Protestants. The Reformation led to a century of religious wars across Europe, as Protestant and Catholic rulers clashed for power. The Reformation ultimately led to a greater degree of religious tolerance in Europe, as rulers eventually recognized the futility of religious wars. The Reformation weakened the power of the Catholic Church and strengthened the authority of monarchs in some countries. The defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 was a pivotal moment in European history, marking a turning point in Anglo-Spanish relations and naval dominance. Here's a breakdown of the key factors that led to Spain's defeat. First, Spain's ambitions. King Philip II of Spain, a fervent Catholic, Philip II aimed to reassert Catholic dominance in Europe by invading Protestant England. Dethrone Queen Elizabeth I, a Protestant seen as a threat to his power. Disrupt English privateering, which was damaging Spanish trade routes. The Armada. A massive fleet. Spain assembled a massive fleet of over 130 ships, carrying thousands of soldiers and sailors. It was nicknamed the Invincible Armada. Among England's advantages are worth noting. Smaller but maneuverable ships, the English fleet under Lord Howard of Effingham and Sir Francis Drake consisted of faster and more maneuverable ships. Use of cannon. The English used superior naval tactics, firing light cannon from long range and then closing in for capture and boarding. Favorable weather. Favorable winds and storms also played a role, scattering the Spanish ships and preventing them from maneuvering effectively. The Armada's planned route around the north of Scotland proved treacherous. They also underestimated England's naval capabilities. A series of skirmishes culminated in the major Battle of Gravelines, in which the Spanish suffered significant losses. Forced to retreat northward, many ships were wrecked off the rocky coasts of Ireland and Scotland by storms. The defeat of the Armada was a major blow to Spanish prestige and power. It solidified England's position as a major naval force. The Armada's defeat marked a turning point in the Anglo-Spanish conflict, ultimately leading to a decline in Spanish dominance and a rise in English power. Today, the defeat of the Armada is often celebrated in England as a national triumph. Let's move on to the French Revolution. The French Revolution, 1789 to 1799, was a period of radical social and political upheaval in France. Causes of the Revolution. Uneven social structure. French society was divided into three classes: the privileged clergy and nobility, the first and second estates, the common people, the third estate, and everyone else, mostly peasants. The third estate bore a disproportionate tax burden and had no political representation. Economic hardship. France faced a financial crisis caused by wars, lavish spending by the monarchy, and crop failure. This led to widespread food shortages and poverty. Ideas of the Enlightenment. The ideals of liberty, equality, and reason espoused by philosophers such as Voltaire and Rousseau challenged the absolute power of the monarchy and the privileges of the aristocracy. The storming of the Bastille, July 14, 1789. This event, often seen as the symbolic beginning of the Revolution, involved the seizure of a prison in Paris, representing the overthrow of royal authority. Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen, 1789. This document enshrined the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity, which became the cornerstone of French democracy. The rise and fall of various governments. The Revolution witnessed the rise and fall of various governments, from the moderate constitutional monarchy to the radical Jacobin terror under Robespierre. Execution of King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, 1793, this marked the end of the French monarchy and a symbolic break with the past. The revolution abolished the feudal system and established a republic. The revolution ultimately paved the way for the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte, who seized power in a coup d'etat in 1799. The Industrial Revolution, a period of rapid technological and economic change, began in Great Britain around the middle of the 18th century, 1760 to 1840. Why did it begin? Factors that contributed to Britain's leadership. Textile industry. Britain already had a well-developed textile industry, especially the production of wool and cotton. This provided the basis for innovation in textile machinery. Abundance of coal. Britain had abundant supplies of coal, a crucial source of energy for running steam engines, which revolutionized manufacturing. Agricultural revolution. Earlier advances in agriculture increased food production, freed up labor for factories, and reduced dependence on subsistence farming. Political stability. Britain's relatively stable political climate created favorable conditions for long-term investment and innovation. Entrepreneurial spirit. The spirit of invention and willingness to take risks fostered a business environment that embraced new technologies. Trade and commerce. Britain's strong maritime tradition and developed trade networks facilitated the import of raw materials and the export of manufactured goods. Key inventions of the period. Textile industry. Machines such as the spinning machine, water frame, and loom greatly increased the speed and efficiency of textile production. Steam engine. The invention of the steam engine by Thomas Newcomen and James Watt provided a powerful and versatile source of energy for factories. Iron and steel production. Advancements in smelting techniques allowed for mass production of iron and steel, essential for machinery and infrastructure. Impact of the Industrial Revolution. Factory system. Production shifted from homes, cottage industry, to large-scale factories, transforming working conditions and social structures. Urbanization. The rise of factories led to rapid population growth in cities, creating new social challenges and opportunities. Transportation revolution. Developments like steam locomotives and steamships revolutionized transportation of goods and people. Economic growth. The Industrial Revolution led to a surge in economic output and international trade. That's all for today. Hope you enjoy this video. Subscribe to the channel so you will not miss the next video.